And tonight, some really intense Doctor Who debate that will get you behind the sofa.
Let me take you timey-wimey back to the 27th of January through to the 17th of February 1973. Carnival of Monsters. What a promising title. Builds up so many thoughts and ideas to a kid. Plot-wise, it delivered monsters in a collection and the messaging was pretty interesting. More of which later. Well, I suppose if you would summing it up very quickly, it was like, I'd say the Carnival of Monsters is more like the Generation game mixed with Border Control Australia, 2 programs there. Review-wise, Mark Braxton from the Radio Times said, after a couple of early stumbles, writer Robert Holmes is now well into his stride. His fan-pleasing soup of what the butler saw, political squabbling, Christie-ish mystery and monsters, unleashed bubbles with invention from the get-go. The premise is ingenious, conceptually akin to something Douglas Adams might have dashed off after a light nap, and the opening overs induce pleasurable perplexity in the viewer. What relationship can there be possibly with a conveyor belt, omnivorous swamp dragons and topping sundowners, we wonder. How can you make a link between them? Although Holmes pieces it together a little too briskly, the discipline of his writing is a thing of wonder. He apportions an even amount of time and importance to the disparate groups and gives each a distinct flavour. Robert Holmes at his best. We will see. So, welcome to everybody watching. Carnival of Monsters, a tasty little treat for you. And, of course, we've got our little items. What would Ncuti do in these situations? We have no Sutek this week. We can't. It's pre-Pyramids of Mars. So I'm sorry, that's getting rested this week. No, do not disturb Sutek. No. But we will have our intimacy rewatch. Oh, yes. We'll see whether there's any problematic scenes in Carnival of Monsters. A new quickie, because obviously you talk about episodic. The cliffhangers in Carnival of Monsters were the key or were the twee? No, with a you know what I'm saying. You know what I'm saying. We've got our criteria. I'll take you through them just in case you've never seen us before. But we judge as impartially as we can, as much as we can. Nostalgia does get in the way, and sentiment. And I've got a panel. And the panel, I will assemble in a second, and they know what they're doing. They know the criteria. They've got their judgments, and so we're going to rattle on with that for your delectation. So let's get the first one on. She's our very own Virginia ambassador, mistress of the supernatural and various hauntings. Let's shine the ghost light on Michelle.
Hello.
Oh, you're getting a bigger build-up every week. This is all right.
I know. The boys are going to get jealous.
Yeah, let's just make sure one or two don't. Right, so who else can we get out of the ether, so to speak? So let's have a look. Let's see if I can find them. Let's have a look. Oh, yes. Now, famous for having a brother in Trumpton Fire Brigade with his twin brother Pew, we have Hugh.
Barney McGrew, Cuthbert, Dibble and Grub.
That's it. Oh, you must have been so proud as a kid to be in Trumpton.
It's an interesting one because my name didn't really appear in so many things, so it's quite one of those things where you go, oh, it's my name.
yeah, as it were. Brendan never came up. There was only Brendan Foster, the runner. That was it. And I suppose to complete our original cast, as you might say. We need to go all the way back to the scrapyard. No, sorry, we need to go. Let's get this right. He likes a build up, does our John? He does. Always one panelist who was shy, retiring, low profile, anxious, needs bringing out of his shell, coaxing, so to speak. But that's not John. So we'll get John on. Here he is. Oh, John. You've gone on mute.
Which John, though?
Well, which John? Silent John sounded good. I was up for that one. Are you in Life on Mars or something?
Am I what?
Are you in Life on Mars, the series?
I don't know if you and Mars will be involved in this. Listen, I was just thinking.
Yes.
When you mentioned Hugh of the Pew Barnum Group,
yeah,
and you mentioned Trumpton,
yes,
Michelle agreed with me that now the president-elect, Washington is about to become Trump Town.
True.
Very good.
True.
Very good. Oh my God.
I'm nothing if not relevant.
Topical, you may say.
No, I said relevant.
Well, here we go. I'll get you going straight away. There you go. Has anyone got that toy? The drashig?
Not that I'm going to admit to.
What I'll do for
does Ann Summers do a Carnival of Monsters line?
Well, knowing that we have Who pets and their, hands have to go in various places, that is actually, we could have had him in, but I have mine boxed, so I kind of, there he is.
Oh, did you spend money on that?
There you go.
That's horrible. I like the Omega, and what's the other?
The Auton.
Yeah, that's all good, but the drashig, that's obscene.
It's weird because character options to suddenly do a hand puppet one is very strange. So I wonder if they're a bit rarer. But there you go. There's the good old drashig. And in fact, the drashig in the program, which we'll discuss, was probably a lot more tasty than that one and interesting. Now, talking about hands up puppets and all the rest of it, I don't know. We may have a visitation. I don't know. Let's just check because I liked. Here we go.
God.
Oh, you see, they've been breeding. Who are you?
What's this? Who's that?
Who's this? Mr. Comb Over. Look at that. I mean, you need a comb. Who are you?
Is it Perry Comb Over?
Should be called Perry Comb Over. So who are you?
Where am I?
What? Oh, what? You're on the Sensory, yeah? You're live, actually.
My name's Neville.
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 No, you look like Jesus or something. I mean, oh, look, your sandals come off as well. He's got lovely Fred Flintstone feet. I wish I could show you them.
What's he called?
Neville.
I
thought he'd be called Harold or Norman.
No. Neville's novel.
Please don't tell me you're repurposing a Jesus puppet, please.
Well, please ignore us. No, he's Moses then. He's Moses. Oh, he's doing to give us a look at them feet. Look at that.
I wondered what was coming up there for a minute.
I can't stretch it too far, but
I heard that also.
So what's the issue? Because we're trying to do a program.
Looking for fire.
God. Fire.
Aim of skulls.
Yeah, that was last week. That was last week. The anniversary's gone.
Oh, all this metal.
Oh God, creature from the pit. Now here we go. He's obviously one of those extras who can't get on the right program. You need to be on the right week. There's normally a Doctor Who story when we have a savage or a Neanderthal. Are you looking for God by any chance?
God's in front. God.
Yeah, he needs a script.
Go tell him to put the right thing somewhere else.
Yeah, go and find God. Planet of Fire. Oh,
Fire, heat.
Yeah, go and find that creature from the pit. He'll gobble you up. You're a bit like Organ and Gone Wrong, you, aren't you? Yeah.
I'm still trying to. Does Neville have a surname?
What surname?
Oh, he's very limited.
What's her name?
John, you're asking a lot. I mean, he could have been just like in Cave of Skulls when they just go fire.
Or he could indeed be like Phil and Gary Neville's dad, who's called Neville.
Oh, that's true.
You savage.
novel.
Oh God, savage! You're savage and you stink.
He's got,
Clear off.
I must say, he's got a great range.
Yeah, I mean, he
Well,
did
this-
at least
he-
5 words.
It was
Then.
really difficult for him to remember his lines too, because they're so complex.
Oh, he's been rehearsing for weeks. He's an extra.
To be fair, I've seen Wasps on Doctor Who.
Oh, God, bless him. Can I just say, if he's looking for fire, I'm more than happy to take a match to him. Literally.
Who's this?
Oh, Lord, we got another one.
Say that, John.
Oh, he's.
I've got a bone to pick with you.
Oh God, this is getting really. Yeah. So, who are you?
Oh, I'm dead unlucky, me.
Oh,
Dead unlucky.
dead unlucky to be on this show.
He's not the only bloody one.
Yeah, I know.
He looks like a Jeff Dunham reject.
So, what's your issue then? Why you're on here? Because I don't see. You weren't in Carnival of Monsters either.
Well, I was actually.
Oh,
I've just escaped the deadly drashigs.
did you?
With the bit of flesh I've got left intact.
Where's that?
This is when the doctor set fire to the marsh gas with his
With his Sonic.
sonic screwdriver. So I got blown up in a piece of smoke with him.
Oh, that's very unlucky. So you escaped the drashig just, and then he set fire to all the marsh gases. All right.
Yeah,
So you're dead.
typical. BBC Health and Safety is nowhere in sight.
Oh, not in 73, I don't think.
Yeah, well, definitely not then.
No.
That you'd have John Noakes up the Nelson's column then.
Exactly. And other columns are available. But, so,
Look, as you can imagine, I'm a bit cold now.
well, there's a cost of living crisis. I mean, you want to wrap up? There's a Tom Baker scarf downstairs.
I could do with that.
Listen, tell him to write to Keir Starmer and get his 300 quid.
Exactly. Yeah, you might be owed it. So, do I know you? Are you related to anyone?
Oh, it's my brother Skeletor.
Oh, Skeletor from He-Man. That's not bad. And what's your name?
Oh, I don't know.
Skeleted, I think it was.
Oh, Ted. Ted, yeah.
I know everything.
Skeleton.
Well, you want to get wrapped up. Go and get wrapped up. I'm worried sick about you. Go and find that caveman. He's after fire. You could make rub.
Oh, don't mention fire.
Actually, he'll rub you up the wrong way. You make a fire. Anyway, goodbye. We're very
bye.
busy. We've got serious people on this program.
Yeah.
You wonder why you turn up, don't you? Sometimes to do often. Yeah. Right. Well, I think we better start proceedings then. I mean, because they're delayed us quite a bit. So let's have a look. We've got a Carnival of Monsters here. Great story of notoriety in many ways, really. So you've got, it used to be called, or it was originally going to be called The Peep Show and/or Labyrinth. People say this is the only time the Third Doctor kind of is in the same story as a Cybermen until the 5 Doctors. This is the first story you see the Third Doctor flee from his exile. The first time a Tellurian is mentioned. Later on in the 2 Doctors, drashigs came from the anagram of dish rag. And there's a bit of blah, blah, blah. Does anyone want to pick on anything just straight away from what they noticed with Carnival of Monsters, John?
Would you mean from that list or just my
Oh,
own?
no, just as just generally.
Yeah, I like the title. I'm glad they chose Carnival of Monsters other than Peep Show or Labyrinth. And having done my homework for this program, which, as you know, I do diligently, Into the Labyrinth was also one of the suggested titles, which none of which makes sense to me. I don't understand why Robert Holmes toyed with those ideas. Peep Show I get, but again, Peep Show we're perhaps going down territory we might not want to steer into. Children's company. You probably, Brendan, we know a lot about Peep Shows, being desperate.
Yeah, or Russell Davies would.
He might do, yeah. But Carnival of Monsters, they chose the right title there. I'm glad they did because it's a great title.
It is. And although I'll come back to my thumbnail a bit later on, but Hugh, just generally, this story.
So, I mean, I think the interesting thing for me is whenever you watch it, or whenever watched it this time, how much mirroring there is between the Vorg and an assistant, Doctor Who and assistant, and even Major Daly and his daughter. And Jenny McCracken and Cheryl Hall, both, as far as I know, auditioned to be Joe Grant. And I do wonder whether the casting was taking that into account.
Because Barry Letts was obviously the director in this one, so of
Mhm.
course he knows his stuff. Michelle, just generally speaking, when I picked Carnival of Monsters, you were thinking,
I was thinking, is that the one with the weird costumes? It's like, okay, you know, what's this one all about? And I was pleasantly surprised. I liked it. I mean, I had fun.
Was this your first time seeing it, Michelle?
Yes, it was.
Oh, good.
Yeah, I've not done a lot in the Third Doctor era, and so I really enjoyed this one because I've been aware of Carnival of Monsters.
Mhm.
I've seen the pictures. I've seen like the pictures of him with the Carnival Barker people going, "What the blank is this?"
Yeah, the thing about Carnival of Monsters is it got, for people of my generation, it got two premieres. The first time in 1973 when it was broadcast, and again in 81. This is pre-VHS and all the rest of
Right.
it. So we did it again as part of the Five Faces. So I only saw it properly, if you like, as an adult, or as close to as an adult as I've ever been in 1981 when it was shown again. So it is, again, like Three Doctors, which is oft repeated. And Unearthly Child. It was one of those ones to get two premieres, and it's held in high regard, I think, by Doctor Who's fans because of the fact it's indicative of what the Third Doctor era ultimately became once he was let loose of his exile, but also because it had that second airing and it became very close to our hearts as a result of that, because this is pre-VHS and DVD and all sorts.
Was this his first non-unit story as the Third Doctor also?
Yes. This is, if you remember the Enter Three Doctors, where he's given the ability to the times.
I suppose there's colony in space in a way, isn't there?
Oh yeah, but that was he was on an errand for the Time Lords during those. This one was at the end of the Three Doctors, where he's given freedom to travel again. This is him taking them up on that offer. Although interestingly, this was filmed before the Three Doctors.
But look at the ratings. I mean, the ratings tells you, Michelle, exactly what was going on then. I mean,
oh yeah, this is Pertwee. This is classic Doctor Who at its highest.
Oh God, it does resonate. I mean, Hugh. I mean, I don't know where you were when you first watched this, but I can't lie and say I remember watching the story. But there's something that goes on when I see certain scenes that do seem to resonate, and I can't pin it down. And it wasn't Five Faces. Pertwee coming out of the TARDIS and hearing his voice, so in charge. It's so relaxing. I don't know. It does something more than it is in some ways. I mean, Hugh. I mean,
well, yeah. I think that the whole thing about this is that it is a resetting. So like, it is that move from sort of like being on Earth, being with unit, being restricted, and it's quite an odd resetting, and it's also a resetting, I think, of Robert Holmes in terms of the fact that he's given more rein to the humour, and it also resets some of the whole story. The challenge from Joe Grant in terms of what the Time Lords interfere with is a really interesting statement, because it's not really something that's been dealt with up to that point, because they do interfere. I mean, that's the thing, they're always bloody interfering. But you know, sort of like, and that's challenged there. And I think it is definitely Doctor Who, but it's not necessarily a Doctor that we've seen before.
Well, I've got questions, and of course, we can't do a review without burning issues. And of course, are there any for Carnival of Monsters? Well, here we go. There's none. No, they are. I have. Right, I'll start off just in case. I've put it in my thumbnail, really. A peep into Pertwee Unbound, and I start to think, do you know what? I have to sell the truth. I know people going about Inferno and Spearhead and that, but I wasn't watching it live then. But as a kid of a certain time, Pertwee Unbound, a bit late in his era, is my favorite. And Carnival of Monsters, to me, shows me that while Pertwee and Unit were fab, and I can understand why people love that and have affection for that period, I think Pertwee's Doctor on an alien planet is phenomenal.
Mhm.
He's so much better. And Carnival of Monsters, to me, tells me what we lost some years when he wasn't doing this. Give me John Pertwee down Planet of the Daleks corridor. Get him on Exelon. Get him on Peladon. Get him on Draconia. I absolutely love it. And then you think, how many others could we have had? Unit, I wouldn't want to take away, but it does raise the question to me. Oh, it's a bit like we say with the Doctors now, when sometimes they get bogged down with modern day Earth. What are your thoughts on that?
I disagree.
And the reason is, I know you love Unit, of course.
Of course, the whole Unit thing. No, I agree with you. Pertwee's Doctor suits the walking down those corridors, running down those corridors, doing all those things. But I would never change anything about those first couple of years with Nicholas Courtney and the relationship. I think he had a brilliant relationship with the third Doctor, more so than he had with the second. And my only regret is if we could get an amalgam of what you wanted there, Brendan, in that. That the Brigadier had joined the TARDIS crew on some occasions, and just we got a bit of wonderment as he experienced different alien planets and societies and civilizations. It might have been fun, not all the time, but on occasions. But no, I like the idea. I love the season 7 Pertwee Doctor. I equally love the sort of more cartoonish, the more comic strip season 8 Unit. Third Doctor that we get going forward. I love it all. And I think had it gone on, it may well have become samey. I think Letts and Dix just changed it just in time for it not to be. So I think we get the best of both worlds with Pertwee's Doctor. We get a sample of what he looks like, plus the Unit stuff, and then later we get all the off-Earth stuff with a little bit of Unit thrown in towards the end. So what's not to like?
Yeah. What are your thoughts, Hugh, on that one?
I mean, I'm possibly in between on this. I agree with you. I think that the problem with the Unit things is because they are so consistent. And actually, the problem with Unit things is I think there's too much. It's the Masters having another plot, and it becomes repetitive. I think if we had more scope, and I think John's right, whether it's the Brigadier going to an alien planet or just different challenges. And one of the most interesting things about this is that it's really low key in terms of the danger in comparison to what we're used to. And I think that allows for the humour, but also think it allows Pertwee to do something different. He's not just saving the world.
I mean, Michelle, when you saw, I mean, I know you've seen Pertwee before, but the thing that gets me about Pertwee, when I see him in this kind of situation, not encumbered in a way by Unit and not actually relying on them sometimes, that he's on his own. And that face, and he looks scared, and he looks serious, and I don't know, there's something about that third Doctor that just stands out an absolute mile. I don't know what it did to you, Michelle, regarding, is this one of your Doctors, really?
Not yet, because I haven't seen a lot of the Pertwee, but he is definitely a unique Doctor.
So if I may ask, I know you're more New Who, as in that's how you came to it.
Well, more of the 80s Who too, also.
Yeah. So when I mentioned Unit and trying to be an unencumbered Doctor, has that ever come into your thinking about what story you're going to watch next? Do you think, the Unit years? Or I mean, how does it make you think?
Good question. Yeah, because sometimes I think I am hampered by the Unit of it almost sounds like too much of the problems of New Who, where every week is the greatest threat the world has ever faced, and it starts getting a little unencumbered, and also kind of unauthoritarian. So to have to be hampered by authority and having to be hampered by the military doesn't really seem to me how I view the character. Now I could totally be wrong. I need to definitely dip more into this in the and it's also this getting more chilly, more Doctor Who weather than summertime. But it was kind of like that he is so hampered on Earth and hampered by Unit.
So we've kind of looked on that one. I just thought, you know, I mean, to be honest, I'll always try and come up with a
Can I just say something?
I love this episode because it seemed to be the danger was low. There's danger to the doctor and the companion, which you always got to have, but it wasn't the oh my goodness, this is the worst villain ever. Because they see that's the problem with you. Every episode is the greatest threat the doctor has ever faced. The greatest threat the world has ever faced, the universe has ever faced. I love these low stakes where the doctor is in danger and the companion's in danger. But if they die, it's not going to affect the world. It's going to, affect the world, but it's not going to affect the universe.
Can I say two things, Brendan, if I may, just to go based on one thing Michelle has said there, and your original point. But what Michelle says there is absolutely right. It is low stakes. It's and all the better for it. And originally, Joe was came out of the scope of the Doctor, then of Part 3, and quite wisely, Terence Dicks suggested to Robert Holmes, no, increase the personal stakes to the Doctor by having Joe still part of the action throughout episode 4 to increase the jeopardy, if you like, being there. So that's also the good news. And those low stakes are good, but they're high stakes to the people involved, and high stakes to us at home because we like these characters, we love these characters, and we want them to be well. And to your point, Brendan, about the notion of the Doctor being if you like, away from unit and with the military and the earthbound setting. Having said that, for 3 of these episodes, he does spend most of the time with Major Daly and his family, so he tends to be still very much in that earthbound setting. Happens to be the past this time, and he fits it terribly well. All that interplay between him and the Major, it works so well. I imagine Tom Baker's Doctor being totally uninterested in Major Daly, and the Troughton Doctor just being embarrassed and wanting to skedaddle off, whatever it is. So Pertwee's Doctor fits this very, very well, even though he's still doing what comes to him very, very easily in terms of dealing with the military or the upper classes.
There's the element that he's that unit. He seemed to be hand in glove with units, but there's a Navy lark. I mean, and then the fact that he had been in the Navy, and I suppose there's an element there that get John Pertwee on a ship. Is it must be in his blood. And of course, it's well known. I mean, he's got a fantastic that Moon Boots and Dinner Suits autobiography is wonderful. And you've got two things in this story. You've got show business and the carnival lingo and all the rest of it. And John Pertwee loves that. I mean, his family history. And then, of course, his naval background. And so, I think in a way, it seems like it's a favor almost to John Pertwee to hit all those notes he knows pretty well, which is the naval life, filming on a ship. It just seemed to be manna from heaven for him.
Nicking the... what do you call it? The compass, the big ship's compass. He nicked that. Told not to, but he nicked it anyway. And was told to put it back by Barry Letts when they discovered it was missing.
Yes, because Jo Grant as a character is the tea leaf. To be quite honest, she's always the tea leaf.
The Third Doctor didn't nick it. John Pertwee nicked it.
One tiny comment I want to kind of make on the Burning Issues segment. I just wondered what your thoughts were. I'm not looking for trouble. I really am not. But I did read some of the writings about Carnival of Monsters, and they said, and actually Barry Letts, I think, had to tell off one of the extras, one of the playing one of the sea crewmen.
Yeah, he was shooting his rifle too.
Yes, exactly what you're saying there, John. Now, okay, that's the behind the scenes story, but in front of camera, I don't know. Do you think the representation is comfortable? Is okay? It's very tiny. Does anyone think it's noteworthy? Because I noticed when everyone's talking about the war games in colour, part of the discussion about everyone's saying, well, why not Tomb of the Cybermen? That's only 4 parts, and then you wouldn't have had to have gutted and butchered it. And people are saying, well, there's a problematic character in Tomb of the Cybermen. That's why they didn't pick it. So you're going, oh my God, are we going there really? So do you think Carnival of Monsters, or to a lesser scale, but do you think, because it mentions natives, as it were.
I don't know why, can we move on? Let's not talk about this. Why must all this garbage?
It is of its time.
Interview with enjoyment. It's of its time. let's move on. And
And doesn't he agree with
I
like
was,
we
I was
understand
hearing, I was hearing today, and I can't remember where I heard it, but someone had complained about people wearing lensless glasses as a fashion statement, as taking the mickey or being disrespectful to those people who actually did wear glasses. And that's where the nonsense we've come to these days. So it was of its time, and it was fine by me, and it's fine by me now. And I don't want to waste it. I mean, I appreciate you do, Brendan, but I don't want to waste any of my time.
Yeah, you might say that, but I'm only raising the point that's out there in 2024 now, which is I would like to see Tomb of the Cybermen in colour, and if somebody makes a decision not to, then I am riled. So you can have your opinion to say that, but if I'm the one who's been deprived of it in colour, then I do have skin in the game.
But what's that got to do with Carnival of Monsters at the minute?
Because decisions are like being made like this by people above us all the time. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, but I don't
the other thing about Carnival of Monsters, though, is that it's also taking the mickey out of the attitude. I mean, you're not going to write, "Oh, look, a memsahib," unless you're sort of like actually challenging that, or John, my friend Aidan, who refers to his wife as the memsahib, but there we are.
Yeah. The final burning issue, and this was the bigger one, was regarding Michael Wisher. Did you find, and I'm intrigued what Michelle thinks, when you hear Michael Wisher's lines and the delivery of his lines, I really, really do hear Davros. And the crossover is amazing because a lot of the lines, I was nearly going to make a note of them. It's the same Machiavellian character to a degree. And since me, John, and Hugh probably really know that Genesis of the Daleks album pretty well, that soundtrack, you can hear the same vocab, the same resonances. Of course, he's an actor, so you'll hear the same resonances. But my God, what a blurring from Carnival of Monsters to Genesis. As you watch back, I mean, Michelle, did you hear Davros? Not just because it's the same voice, but did you hear a similar type of character?
Similar, but that Machiavellian, again, that Machiavellian, that I'm very dapper, but there's something depth behind me. I'm that, almost that proper British establishment but behind him you see all the gears turning, and it's a great character though, and I love that aspect of we're going to go to this alien planet that seems to be so advanced, but actually, they're doing this behind the scenes. Like, we need a war. We need to bring the people together because we need something to fight. So let's the monsters slip into our world.
I mean, Hugh, obviously I've just been watching the Silurians, and of course Nida's in that. I mean, so I understand. I mean, this happens all the time, but it was more than just the voice resonance. I just felt as though it was a similar character, similar script in certain lines. I don't know.
Isn't that sort of one of the reasons why he's cast in this? Because his tone, as an actor, tends to support that type of character, and it's in terms of crossovers, you get people who are not entirely typecast, but they are being used in similar characters. And I don't find it at all problematic in this. I don't hear Davros. I can hear a bit of it, but it doesn't ever bother me because I've watched this so often that it's a genre all of itself.
I mean, John, I mean, they have it's not like an ensemble cast of there's a crew that's used quite a lot by certain directors, but you had in early Who, you did have actors and you thought, oh, it's you again. Oh, it's you again. I mean, I understand that. That's fine. It's just I found that the characterization was quite close. I'm not saying it's problematic as in that it's the end of it. I'm just saying watching Carnival of Monsters for the first time for a little while, I thought, God, it's just Davros, it's Davros, it's Davros. It almost was breaking the fourth wall for me a bit, John,
Well, obviously it's not Davros because this predates Davros. So this is, if anything, you want to watch Davros and say, oh God, that's Calic. That's what you want to do there because this comes first. Only Doctor Who fans would have this conversation. It doesn't matter. It's the cadence of the actor's voice. It sounds the same. He's got a brilliant voice. He's got a brilliant voice playing villains. And in Davros, he achieves as far as I'm concerned, the pinnacle of probably his villain playing career. Although remember that in the same point, through those first 2 Tom Baker seasons, he plays 3 different parts. He plays Davros, and then the following story, he's playing a very ineffectual Vogan, and then 2 stories later, he's playing a very easily killed Marestran pilot in Planet of Evil.
And
He's instantly recognisable in all of those parts because he has an instantly recognisable voice. But if we're going to relate this at all to Davros, then I'm sorry, Kalik got there first.
He did get there first, or should I say a Dalek got there first?
Kalik the Dalek could have been, yeah.
Dalek, Kalik. I mean, anyway, he's a Khalid, he's a Kalik, he's a Khalid, he's a Dalek. So,
the Garden of the Stones of Blood, he could have been the Kalikiak.
Maybe it was in his script. Sorry, his contract. He only needs short names. So, Carnival of Monsters. I mean, we've just kind of chewing at the edges of it so far. So let's kind of go into the first main one, which is
the drashig.
The drashig, yeah. Well, I know the edges. So our classic first one, we normally call it True Who or Boo Who. Criterion one, the safeguarding of who. Was it canon? Was it da 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 da? And I can't change this. This is how we judge season 1 Ncuti. So of course, if the answer is here we go. So Michelle, having not seen this story before, it is going to be intriguing. Was this classic Doctor Who?
Oh, 100%. It was a nice fuzzy sweater. It felt good. It was a class. 100% classic Who. This is a doctor, an actor who knows his character again, who is loving every minute being the Doctor. He's loving every minute with Joe. The chemistry with Joe and the Doctor right now is phenomenal.
Yeah.
And it just was wonderful.
I did enjoy the how Joe and the Doctor interact, and I like the fact that there's a different hierarchy to a degree. The Doctor tends, she has the thing about Joe is she is a tea leaf and she knows how to open the door. She's always, you see the Sea Devils, you see everything. She's always sneaking around. She's very helpful to the Doctor in that way. And she does it again here. She's really brilliant because now and again the sonic screwdriver was useless in this episode, in this story.
Which is fun. I love the sonic screwdriver isn't a Harry Potter wand. It can't get out of the door because it's modern technology. It's earthbound modern technology. I love that. So she pulls it out like, hey, look what I got.
Well, one of the best bits for me, Michelle, in that regard, just the very point you're making is, yes, instead of it being a Harry Potter one that we get nowadays, the John Pertwee Doctor had to say, he can't use it because the marsh gas had already been, set on fire, and it won't work now regarding that. It's useless now. There was another point he couldn't use it. John, classic Doctor Who. This is Doctor Who as familiar as can be.
It is, yeah. And it's probably the sort of story that only Doctor Who could do. It's very ambitious. If I had a burning issue to speak about it would have been probably about the overuse of CSO, which is Barry Lett's favourite thing. And it's Doctor Who being terribly, terribly ambitious and not always succeeding, but, getting 100% for trying. And that's what Doctor Who is always pushing. As I say, this story was filmed at the end of the 9th season, to the beginning of the 10th season. So you're talking end of budget stuff here as well. So the way the budgets works out there. And I just think it's very classic Doctor Who. It's Doctor Who trying to show the how flexible the format is. So Doctor Who's doing several things at once here. You've got Alien Planet, you've got the traditional Earthbound, as we think, setting. We've got the relationship with the Doctor and Joe, with the TARDIS finally able to travel through space and time. The Doctor making that relationship with those Earthbound characters, and then latterly towards his interaction with some very grey, bureaucrats on Intermine and all the rest of it. So it's hitting all those Doctor Who traits all at once. In fact, it's Doctor Who perhaps running again before it can walk, in terms of giving the Doctor the freedom to go into space and time. Is doing so many different things all at once, this story. But it's Doctor Who with great ambition. And if Doctor Who's going to get great ambition, it may as well be written by Robert Holmes and produced by Barry Letts and scripted by Terry Sticks, because they don't let us down. there's no mistake that this was chosen for the five faces of Doctor Who. It's an archetypal example, I think, of 70s Doctor Who. Not third Doctor Who, but what third Doctor Who become of good, solid 70s science fiction, good representation where the third Doctor shows off what his Doctor is good at, and just generally all round exemplifies. Is a great exemplification of what a showcase is. It can be a good showcase for what Doctor Who is.
Hugh?
Absolutely agree. I mean, I think, as I was saying, if you're watching it at the time, you might, as I did, think, what is this? Because it was quite different. I think the amount of humour in it, in terms of that, and the amount of satire that's in it is unusual in terms of that. And so you could argue, as I say, it's a bit of a change, but I think it comes into what John was saying about if you don't see Doctor Who trying new stuff, then it's probably not going to be that useful. I think this is, one of the great stories in terms of people being able to watch it. And again, sort of to reiterate John's point, in terms of the Five Faces, it is a standalone story completely. So you don't need to know. I mean, yes, you get to see Ogrod and you get to see the Cybermen, but those are just thrown in. The story works completely on its own. It's a nice, easy watch for everyone. I think it does a lot of more comedy than we were used to. I say, I thought the mirroring of Vorg and Doctor Who. So you've got a madman in a box, who the box is bigger on the inside, and you've got an incompetent with a box where the outside is bigger than the inside. I think there's something there. The whole thing where you've got the fact that Pertwee gets on well, effectively, with Vorg, even though he dislikes what he does, and with Major Daly. It's about that capability that John Pertwee, I think, particularly had, of being both a bit establishment and also a wee bit shady.
Yeah,
I
mean, there's so many bits you could mention, aren't there? I mean, I loved the third Doctor when he's on his game and, telling off the aliens. I mean, I think, John, you mentioned when he finally comes out of the miniscope and he's, you just love it. And he tells those three off. He tells off Vorg in a kind of way, because he goes, who owns this miniscope? And, I love that kind of, the third Doctor was so good at that, like quoting a law. He'd be very good at quoting the Shadow Proclamation, the John Pertwee Doctor. He'd be, I got this band, you thought, of course you would. Of course, the third Doctor would be involved in law and stuff like that. And as you were all saying as well, that the interplay with Tenniel Evans, who obviously was his mate from the Naval Ark, who suggested he should go for the Doctor job. Favour done back to come on this one. Topping day, all that kind of stuff, as you were saying.
Pertwee returned the favour by suggesting Tenniel Evans for a part in Doctor. The part he suggested him for was apparently the character of Vorg. But Barry Letts already had Leslie Dwyer in mind for this, which I think was the better choice. I think Leslie Dwyer nails that part, but Tenniel Evans does the other stuff. Hugh and I, when we were chatting over curry last week, we addressed the fact that Tenniel Evans is in fact only 47 when he records the story, which is scary stuff, because he looks and acts a whole lot older. He's older than I am, right?
Yeah, it's talking about timey-wimey. That is, I know, and there is. You think that with William Hartnell. I mean, you look at some of the actors of their time then, and they look an awful lot older.
William Hartnell is called to his face in the first story an old man, and he's 55. Get out of here.
That's not old at all.
Smoking and drinking will do that to you, and also living through the war will do that to you too.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. So yes, I love the Pertwee. He takes on authority. He kicks ass, basically. I also did like the fact, if I'm going to talk about canon and is it classic Doctor Who? Well, Robert Holmes' script, as you were referencing, I mean, he loves his duos. He really is good at that. We know from Talons and so many shows, Caves of Androzani. Do you know what? Caves of, well, I'm going to save one comment for a moment, but Robert Holmes does really, you can tell a Robert Holmes script. The interplay is so well done, the separate worlds. And actually, I suppose I better kind of set it up now, because otherwise I'm going to spoil my own self here. So what I'm doing is, it's saying resonances. So I've got an item. Are you ready? Just here we go.
Cool. Yes.
There you go. Little time, Eddy. So I just thought, when we do a review, not doing the Michael Wisher link, what I'm saying, there's some stories that are akin to others and stuff like that. No, I was going to say, so I might as well say it now, was the miniscope and how Robert Holmes wrote it with the interplay. You can think of the two showman, the showman character in Talons of Wen-Chi-An with the Dr. Lightfoot, Jago and Lightfoot. You can think of Caves of Androzani. I mean, you've got Inter Minor, Androzani Major. Robert Holmes cleverly creates worlds where the characters sometimes never ever meet the other characters. He builds these separate worlds. Caves of Androzani is a classic one for that Morgus and all them you only see at the very end, actually linking with Sharaz Jek. And in this one, Sherna obviously and Vogue don't go into the miniscope. None of the Lermans go into the miniscope. The Doctor comes out, Joe at the very end. There's all these separate worlds, and that's not knocking it. I'm just saying I can see a time, Eddy. I can see a ripple effect there. And my only other one that I wanted to just say as a kind of interesting kind of side note, when you think of the miniscope as an idea, did anyone think of any other Doctor Who story that kind of plays into that a little bit?
What,
everybody
prior to this or after this?
Either way, either way.
Do you know, I could be terribly clever and say yes. So I'll say yes.
There you go. You're right. No.
I knew I was.
Nightmare on Eden. I always think
Nightmare of Eden, of course.
And you know
I was going to say that.
So yeah, I knew it was in your head. It was in your head at that time, wasn't it? So Nightmare on Eden as one example. And of course, the miniaturization thing. I mean, we all love a bit of that. We had Planet of the Giants, Invisible Enemy. There's loads of examples of that. But I just thought, do you know what? I will give a shout out, because the mandrels are what kills this story. But actually, I loved the idea in Nightmare on Eden of the drug smuggling within a machine and all of it. I thought there was some clever stuff there. And I love
a bit of drugs into those flares.
Yeah. I think you need to show off your shirt again, John, as well, just to see. We have John Pertwee live
on the Sphere.
I know. He's basically, you should say, John, like Eric Roberts, I always dress for the occasion.
No, I'm not. I don't. I'm not like you. I don't plagiarize. Get on with it.
John, you were making a point a while back about the canon thing, and of course, you know, this being at the end of season 9, but of course, you forget these model effects as well. I mean, you're thinking they really. I mean, you said it was ambitious, Doctor Who being ambitious, and of course, you look at that shot. That, you know, this is. Yeah,
and it works so well. All those shots, for its time and for its budget, it works just fine. What I struggle with parts of this, which isn't just as good, is Barry Letts' over-reliance of CSO. And it does let the story down on occasions, even for its time, because I think even at the time, because he gets the scales all wrong, you know, in terms of where the drashigs are, in terms of when they break free in part 4 and when they're on the ship, you know. So, and I know that's a matter of time in the studio. And I just think that Barry Letts was so in love with the whole concept of CSO, wanted to use Doctor Who to be a showcase for this new technology. And he was always pushing the envelope with that at times a whole lot of stuff that other producers, stroke directors might not have let happen, he did, because he was doing both functions at the same time. He was producer director, so there was nobody there to tell him, no, don't do that, it might not look so good. He was pushing it. So that sort of lets the show down. But I thought, and I say even at the time, I'm not saying that with a modern perspective, I'm saying that at the time, it just didn't look exactly right. But that's dead easy for me to say, because I am who I am, and then you can me point finger and criticise, but it doesn't spoil the enjoyment of the show. It's just a thing you can point to and say, "Oh, that's a naff effect." But other than that, it doesn't spoil the show.
So, I mean, I've got a question now, because on the ambition front, and it's still kind of Criterion one, because it's the structure of the plot and everything. I'll come to Hugh first on this one, but I've tidied up the item, which is when we're reviewing a story, you've got cliffhanger, key or twee. I mean, which cliffhangers do you think really worked the best? Which ones didn't? Because of course, I think sometimes when we review, we might find some of the cliffhangers are just. I mean, that moment in Death to the Daleks, as you know, that actually wasn't a cliffhanger. You know, in Excellent.
I mean, the scary.
Yeah, when he points at the
floor.
floor. I know. Yeah. Oh my God, floor. But this one, I mean, I'm going to come to Hugh now. Don't worry, Hugh. But you know, there is a story behind part 3 in this one as well, because it all overran. But Hugh, on the 3 cliffhangers, which one do you think, as a kid, grabbed you the most? Which did the work? Did they fit into plot?
So the whole thing about this is, I think we're back at the question of this being relatively low key. So the cliffhangers were good about, stuff like that. All of a sudden you see this tiny person coming out of the thing, so you get the fact of the scale. I think that they work because it is low key, and they're not about. They're about story rather than about scare. I think that's how that works. So I think this is Holmes writing something where you want to know what happens next rather than are worried about what happens next.
The one, John, that got me the most was the hand on the TARDIS. Absolutely. There.
Yeah, I think what scared me most about that was the dirty fingernails.
Yes, yes, he's been gardening.
Yeah, well, I just think I would like to. That's probably Matt Irvin or whoever the Matt Irvin was at the time. You think, look, this is your first on-screen hand. He's not going to win any jobs as a hand model with them dirty fingernails, is he?
Well, he can still have a career in OnlyFans because there's people that are into that.
I want to know that. I don't want that in my head.
Intimacy coordinator.
Yeah, too right. So
I'm shocked.
I said earlier that as a Doctor Who fan, and when I was a child, there's certain scenes I see in Doctor Who, and I'm going, I don't think I saw. It wasn't the 5 faces, but I think there's a resonance to that shot, and the Doctor's voice. I mean, John Pertwee's voice, and Joe, and then him looking up, and then that it just seems to resonate. And if I'm reviewing it, it just seems to have a stronger feel and vibe to me.
It's one of those images that'll stick with you. I mean, some do, some don't. It's also a personal thing, but it obviously did for you. But if you think about that, at the end of this, we've been hinting at what's going on here, about the big mystery of where the Doctor is and how it relates to how these other people on Interminor and Vorg and Sherna. And, we're being led to think there's something obviously to do with the scope. But right bang at the end of episode 1, we have that confirmed through this, and it's the overuse of this word, I know, iconic scene, which will become, for very many people watching at the time, and subsequently in the 5 Faces, or indeed in DVD or VHS, one of these scenes that lodges in their head, because it is a fantastic image, of the big hand reaching in, albeit with dirty fingernails, stretching the TARDIS up, the Doctor and Joe, as you see that. It's a fantastic scene, and one of those gets into your brain and stays there. But the program is so good, so good at doing these classic images that stuck with you. And remember, as Mary Whitehouse used to say, that would stick with you for a whole week. You had to wait to see what happened next. Brilliantly done.
But you see, and like you said, it's ambitious, but they're going for it, and it worked. It worked as a kid. It reminds me in another sort of way, because it is a shock. It is a shock that when you watch Planet of Fire years later, the moment when Perry pulls the box lid off, and you see the Master, that's a shock, actually.
It's true. I'm just glad we are pre-Sutik here, because Sutik may well have got. You may have objected to dirty fingernails.
Sutik will reach down and just bit the hand. No.
Yeah. It's such a shame that
I sort of will point out that in one sense, it's at least a derivative of Star Trek in terms of the ship being held in the hand.
Yes.
Although it wasn't a real hand. But I think the whole thing, again, as I was saying about this, is that in itself isn't scary, and what it does is it moves the story on. I mean, that joining of the two worlds, that's a brilliant piece of writing.
Yeah. And it's done it in episode 1 what it should do, because it's hint, 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 hint.
Yeah.
Absolute confirmation.
Yeah, in quite a shocking way. But I don't remember ever being frightened by any of these, but I always wanted to know what happened next, and that to me is actually more crucial on the cliffhanger than anything else.
Yeah, there's different types of cliffhanger, aren't there? Like you say, there's those where it's high jeopardy or danger. There's also awe, and I think that episode 1, as a kid, I was in shock. I don't think they weren't in danger almost, because you could tell it was just going to lift it out. But
that's why a lot of 80s Who went wrong with this slap bang zoom to the Doctor's face and Doctor in danger. We know those aren't cliffhangers. They're just a so-called convenient dramatic, supposedly, moment to end the action. We're 23 and a half minutes. Quick, we need a cliffhanger. This is properly plotted cliffhanger, which ties in, with the latest twist in the plot, the latest revelation in the plot. It just comes at the right time to confirm in us the juxtaposition with these two worlds that we've been dealing with, up until that point. It's superb.
Do you think episode 3 cliffhanger works he staggers out, and we all know there was the story that he was falling with a drashig falling behind him, but they were overrunning by about 4 minutes, so they had to reshoot and everything. I mean, to me it works. I didn't know the other story. Gosh, it sounded, you said, John, ambition. My God, you said the size difference with the drashigs, and Barry Letts was struggled with that a bit, but can you imagine John Pertwee and a drashig falling out?
Yeah.
That would have been problematic, surely.
Yes, and seeing it for the first time, I can see the ambition. It plays out really well. Yes, special effects are always going to be of their time, and some of it wasn't the greatest, but it's not enough to take me out of it. And I would rather see Doctor Who try to be ambitious and fail than not ambitious at all. And I don't really see the risk-taking of Doctor Who anymore currently in its current iteration.
I'll stay Oh, can I just show you this? Oh, look at this. This is from the radio. Look at this from the Radio Times. The kind of the kind of little synopsis each week. And I have to say, we never got the Radio Times as kids. Obviously. Did you?
Oh, yes. I bought the Radio Times, and I say I because it was me bought it for over 40 years.
It's just.
Do you guys still read the Radio Times, or is that something that's gone away?
There's the Radio Times isn't. You don't need any more Brendan's right. You don't need it, but it's more of a sort of coffee table magazine now than it is anything else. And but can I just go back to those slide, Brendan, because it's nice to see that there are 2 dailies in Doctor Who for 4 weeks.
Yes, there were, well, you see, you didn't have your name up because you've got Elsie and Finlay, but yes, John Daly, you see,
yes.
He's in it.
The old major. Yes, he was my old great uncle, bless him. Went missing in 1926. He reappeared shortly afterwards. Don't know why.
And this is when it is of its time, because they wouldn't really put those characters in a modern story, would they? It's unless it's timey-wimey.
If they did, they would make something of it. They would make him an old bigot or racist.
Yeah, and for the Doctor to have a nice, good speech against him.
He's just a bit of a comic foil in this, which is good.
Yeah.
Mind you, can I just say on the Carnival of Monsters, and I'm not wanting to go to modern, but actually one thing I did notice, and I don't know what you thought, was we've referenced Shirna and the lady on the ship whose name is out my head for a second.
Claire Daly, Jenny McCracken.
That's it. Yeah. Those 2 characters, I think, are given I mean, Shirna especially. I love Shirna's role in this. She's got the one-upmanship on Vogue, hasn't she?
Yes,
she's the one who actually knows how things work. She's the one who's actually keeping an eye on the miniscope. she seems to be the power behind the throne to a degree. He's the showman, isn't he?
I loved her character because she was because it's the twisting of the dumb blonde or the kind of the gal in show business just to she's airhead just there for being a star. She actually had the brains going on of the operation.
Yeah.
And when Joe was talking to this character, she was prompting her to remember. And I just thought there were two very interesting female representations in Carnival of Monsters that actually need to be given credit, because I actually think they were very interesting. And sometimes, these moments are dismissed. The Shona one, very.
Yeah. And the point there, Brendan, really is, well, it may well be fleeting and something passing and all the rest of it. It belies, again, this notion that classic Who was just awful towards women and representation of women. And generally speaking, there was an awful lot of nonsense went on. But let's remember when it was made and who it was made for, and there's a whole lot of stuff going on there. But at times, also, Doctor Who was making the men all be the middle-aged and white, look just what they were, silly fogies, not in control of the situation. And Doctor Who was happy to do that. And history now is being rewritten by the people who make Doctor Who now to make you think that Doctor Who always was down on women and down on ethnic minority, whatever it is, which wasn't always the case. It was on occasions, but it wasn't always the case.
Because Hugh, when you see these two female characters, the lady on the ship, Tenniel Evans's character couldn't remember anything, and the Harry Sullivan, I know he's not Harry Sullivan, Andrews, he couldn't remember, but that character did start to go, hold on, there is something. So there was a strength there. And then with Shona had that moral authority at the end, because remember when Vogue said, I don't think there's any power left. I think they're dead. And she said, no, I wait. And she was more bothered. She was the pressure, the moral pressure, I thought, which gives her character an awful lot of credit.
So, I mean, if you want to look at something similar, and again, I think that's a crucial mirroring about the Doctor and how companions work. But if you want to look at something similar, when in The Files of Pompeii, Donna gets the Doctor to do something that he wouldn't do because of her moral centre. Yeah. And I think sort of like the whole thing is, I thought it's very interesting, for example, that she's obviously clever, but at the same time, she's attached to Vogue for reasons that we don't know. And the backstory there would be fascinating. But presumably, sort of like she was a dancer and he had some money to start with and got her to do stuff in order to be sort of the attraction to the miniscope as well. But it's actually quite an interesting combination between them. And obviously then, whenever she encourages Vogue to try, he becomes the better man and stands up to the drashigs as well. So she's not just the strength, she's also his strength as well.
And coming from Middlesbrough, sorry, John, I'll just say this before my old brain forgets. But to me, coming from Middlesbrough, he's Paul Daniels and she's Debbie McGee. It's sorry, John.
No, I'll just agree with you. She has agency in this. She moves the plot along. She's not just there decoratively. And again, I bring it back to that point. Yeah. We've all been led to believe that old Doctor Who really was just so, prehistoric in terms of his attitudes towards that. But Robert Holmes, again, in his script, creating these characters, giving them the backstory, which we don't get to hear. But I dare say in Holmes's head, he may well have a bit of backstory about how Vorg met Shirna when she was working as a waitress on a cocktail bar, perhaps, after completing her. And we know she's a dancer. We know that Vorg doesn't rate the troupe she was in. So there's great backstory there that you can. And I dare say someone Big Finish, don't for God's sake, don't give them ideas. You can got a whole box set about Vorg and Shirna working in some clapped out club somewhere.
She'd be a pole dancer.
Yeah, she probably would be. No, he would be ultimately, because they do know how to subvert things in that. But nonetheless, great characterization, and not just there, as I say, to decorate the place as we're being led to believe, but moves the plot along. And Hughes quite wisely says there as well, she makes Vorg, the male character, the male protagonist, if you like, on the planet there, better for her part in it. I think that's all great. That's all good writing.
So, if I'm going to jump to Criterion 3, and the reason is because I think it dovetails better than just doing it numerically. On audience engagement, good resolution has to have a good resolution to do well on Criterion 3. You know, it can be a good story, a brilliant. We've all seen a brilliant part 1, and then it falls flat on its face. So, is it a good story, good structure, good resolution? Did it engage you? Let's have a look, Michelle. Since it's your first time on Carnival,
I was happy with it. I'm in last week's State of Decay. I was wandering a little bit during watching it. This one I was going to watch the first 2 parts and save the other 2 later. And I sat down on Sunday and I was so engaged. I'm like, let's go for it, baby. Let's see how this ends. So I was engaged with it. I thought it was a good story. I was happy with the resolution. So I'm going to give it high marks.
The resolution in itself, you know, we're going to try and overthrow President Zab. I'm going to sabotage a piece of equipment. I'm going to try and open this door with the drashigs, all that sort of stuff. I mean, did you see it coming, Michelle? Could you?
Yeah, or a little bit, but it was still entertaining as heck. So, I mean, just because sometimes you can guess an ending doesn't mean it's bad.
Yeah.
I mean, you can see where it's going because sometimes it just takes an astute mind. But, you know, today's writing, you see it coming, and yeah, oftentimes it is bad. But this time, it's like you're fine with it.
Mind you, it's amazing if any story, Doctor Who or not, can make a tune-in fork look scary.
Yes.
It's just, Hugh, your thoughts on the story structure, the resolution, and whether it held together in that way?
I mean, I think it finishes a bit fast in some ways, and not necessarily, I would guess, as Robert Holmes wanted, but that's because of technical issues. I think it's rather wonderful for something to effectively end saying the ending wasn't very good in terms of the book that the Major is reading. And that's obviously Holmes being, we talk about meta nowadays. This is extraordinarily meta, because this is a comment on us watching Doctor Who, because that's what Morgan and Shunner are there for. So, and what makes it so clever is you don't have to know that to enjoy it. Yeah, it's funny in and of itself. It's got enough going on. I'm not really bothered in some cases about what's going on in Interminor, because it's the less interesting part of it. But it's the characterization and the structure of it, the use of the monsters as being scary but not central to the story. And some of the writing again itself. This is definitely, I think, the funniest writing we've had in Doctor Who up till this point.
Yeah, because John, I mean, it is called Carnival of Monsters, and you could argue, as Radio Times review said, you got a bit of a Cyberman, you got a drashig. Drashigs are brilliant, and then you got a dinosaur like a Scarrison, I suppose. To me, John, it engaged me to the end, and yes, I can see your scale thin here. You know what I mean? And as Michelle said, it seemed a bit rushed at the end, but I do. I thought the jeopardy was still there till the end. You know, the fact of, they're all dying in the machine, and and actually it made John Vogue, who was a bit of just it was a vacuous showman, really, but at the end he was the hero because he fired,
and because Shurna made him do this. I'm saying so. The two of them get to interact and create the ending that it does. But like Doctor Who, so the Doctor emerges from the TARDIS with this box with 2 handles on it, phase 1 and phase 2. One gets the Doctor in, and one gets everybody back home again. That's basically it. That's what happens. It's a magic wand, but it's given some bafflegab and some gobbledygook, and it works. But surrounding that, there has to be a reason for a bit of jeopardy at the end. So you have to have what's going on with Calic and all them, for the drashigs to be able to get out, and he lets them out, facilitates this bit of CSO majesty that's witnessed here, and that allows all that to go on at the end. because up until then, it's just basically been a talking shop for the 4 episodes on Interminder and the Doctor coming in at the end of part 3 to give them a row. So yeah, that's good writing. If you ignore the poor effects, there's jeopardy there, and you're involving all the characters. Every single one of those characters at the end is in some sort of jeopardy, and that's all good. And then it's a big magic box which solves it in the end. But interestingly, the Doctor's provided that it's the 2 Lurmans, Vorg and Sherna, who ultimately get everybody home safely. Good, great. Yeah. And then he reverts the type at the end by being his, sort of a devious self and playing the Megan pods in the Euro seat with Pletrak, which he's going to be fine going forward. And what's not to like, you got a lovely big close-up of Sherman, and she gets the big final smile at the end. And what you said earlier on is it's self-contained. So if you just wanted to watch that story, nothing else, great. Off you go.
All the bits you're mentioning show me that this is Doctor Who confident, because to get a little scene like that at the end when he's got the 3 shells and her face at the end, they're all in character, as in they haven't broken character at the end and done something out of, they've been well fleshed out, and that fits all of their characterization, and it's just a neat finish. Everything works, but
yeah, unfortunately nowadays that ending would be spoiled by a big voice saying he will bring 3 Megan pots and put a shell underneath and spell your end, Doctor, to lead towards the big climax of whatever the season is, thus not allowing viewers just to see it as a little self-contained story, and the Doctor and Joe move on to something else. Everything's got to have a resonance towards the bigger end of the story.
There's a really brilliant bit in terms of the characterization, which is you've got the people on the ship who have been stuck in a loop, but whenever they come out of the loop, they're still perfectly in character, and they act in the new world, finishing the novel as that's just, again, it's very, very clever stuff.
And the timey-wimey thing is, because if you remember, the Doctor says to Joe, didn't you know anything about the SS Bernice? It was famous in its time as the Marie Celeste. And of course, Joe wouldn't know, because by the end of the story, it never ever happened. This was never kidnapped. So that's all good. But we're not flagging that stuff up like they would nowadays,
Yeah. I mean, and the other clever thing, I mean, if I'm judging Criterion 3, I've got to say, well, basically Robert Holmes, and then the way the characters were delivered by the actors, I understood and felt for, in different ways, each character. And when I say I felt for them, I understood them. I got them. I was engaged with them. So even when the Lermans were doing their, kind of, we're against Zab and all the rest of it, I understood what was going on. And of course, as a kid, when it's all politics, it can look high and dry. All of these characters, I knew what their role was. Sherna and Vorg, I could see what was going on there. And to be honest, you could see all their little motivations. And we normally big up Malcolm Hulke, fleshing out characters. But I did think the characters in this were recognizable. You could identify with their ambition or their hatred or their, it just went on. I just think it was well crafted.
Yes. For Sherlock Holmes.
Well, yeah. Yeah.
As I was saying earlier on, just these people, although we don't get to see it, I dare say in his head, as he's writing these lines for them and creating these stories, he has their backstory in their head. I mean, Jago and Lightfoot in Talons of Wing Cheyenne, Morgus in a Case of Androzani, they are 3-dimensional because he's given them in his head 3 dimensions. Now, we don't get to see the majority of what Holmes and Willock created for these characters, but the fact that he has created it in his head affects the dialogue he puts into their mouths, and as such, we get the richer experience for it.
Well, while we're just reviewing Carnival of Monsters, as you see, me and John will talk about classic versus New Who, and of course, John, alert. In fact, I'll give you your toxic alert alarm. I should have that ready for John. we
Don't light a match.
I know. I think I'm
about some of those puppets.
I'm about to light a match here because it's the intimacy watch. Here we go. could keep going for a bit longer, actually.
Well, I tell you what, I was just listening to that piece of music. No matter where Vorg met Sherna, you guaranteed that music was playing.
Well, there you go. That's a very good segue. That's a very good segue. That. So me being cheeky and actually trying to impose something that wasn't there, but trying to just say, were there any awkward moments that the precious snowflakes now might find problematic? I think one that nobody can see is the hand up the drashig. That they may need an intimacy watch there.
Well, did the drashig sign consent and say how far the hand can go up?
Well, yeah, because as you know, William Walkie met one of the Sesame Street makers at Niagara, and they were saying how behind the scenes that Sesame Street puppeteers can be a little bit naughty. So
yeah, and I heard some of that.
So apart from the leggings of the Lerman, maybe that could cause problems because people might have said, "Hold on a minute, you're looking too excited in this role." I don't know. I mean, intimacy watch wise. Gives too much away.
Can I make a fairly serious point about that? Which is, I mean, Shauna's meant to be sexy. I mean, she's meant to be there as the eye candy.
Yeah.
And she obviously isn't. And again, it's that writing against the expectation that it does. That yes, you might expect her, and sort of like the Interminoran's reaction to her is not, "Oh, look, there's a memsahib." It's what on earth's that? Or what in Tellurian is that?
And she's not also written as the floozy in the airhead either.
Yeah. So I on a fairly serious point, I think that there's the ideas are there that you could be going sort of like slightly dodgy, and I'm sure that you could do a lot on 20 laps around the ship, but it's plays against type, and that's because it's clever writing. It's just quite. I think it's quite hard to get over quite how clever this is as writing.
Yeah. I mean, and I have to say, I crank the item in, but I was thinking everybody's defined separate worlds, as I said earlier, and all that sort of thing. And actually, the nonsense one, John, that everybody, when people want to argue with us and they say Joe and the Doctor had a romantic liaison, you could tell. No, they didn't.
No.
They love each other like platonic love. Platonic love has been destroyed in today's modern media.
To prove that wrong, you only have to look at the Green Death and see that is the loss of of the fledgling flying. It's actually said to that. This is very much a paternal relationship the Doctor has with Joe. There is nothing sexual in this relationship at all. And anybody who's looking for that is nuts.
That is when Modern Who was ruined. When you have the moment when the Doctor kisses his companion, it changes everything.
Michelle, I really don't care in modern day Doctor Who they do. I accept the fact they do this. That's what happens. That's fine. That's fine. But don't come and tread all over classic Who turf and try and put something there that they're just.
Well, that's because they started at one. Then you start having to look back for it because it's like, I'm the one that hasn't created it. It's always been there. No, it hasn't.
No, it's not yet.
No, it hasn't. Because it's the modern justifying their actions. Not just saying, "Hey, we decided, let's just do it this way." No, it's always been there. We're justifying.
I know we had these conversations a year ago since the Sensphere started about, how inappropriate that would be if that was the case for a John Pertwee Doctor who's very obviously a man. Forget the fact what he's in Time Lord years, but he's very obviously a man in his 60s, supposedly having a relationship with a teenage, and Jo Grant initially is in her late teens and early 20s. It's just entirely inappropriate, and anybody looking to impose that on it really has issues themselves, I think, and just leave it alone. Leave it alone.
And to praise the story and the writing, there was messaging in there. I joked about mixing the generation game with Border Control Australia. It's all about immigration. It's all about treatment of aliens. It's all about deportation. I mean, all these are trigger words now.
Remember, the Interminorians were also victims of a space plague. There's all elements you could do with COVID there as well about not allowing people to cross borders because of fear of contamination. There's a wonderful line but where the snobbishness of the Interminorians towards the functionaries, and they talk give them a hygiene chamber. They only keep fossil fuel in it, which, for those of us in the United Kingdom know that that's a spoof on the phrase "keeping coal in the bath," which a lot of southern people think northern people did. So there's all that going on there as well. And it's all great, as you say, great writing. No need for, although the mention of bath may well have required an intimacy coordinator, perhaps.
Yes, certainly. Do you know what though? Yes, I can see the immigration discussion, and it was just there. And the whole debate about whether you deport them or destroy them, and politicians losing face and all that stuff. But the one that resonated with me the most, and there were some lovely lines that the doctor did about rock pools and sea creatures and everything, was zoos and animals in captivity. I thought the message there was lovely because it just plays all the way through. It was more subtle than the two doctors on the, the vegetarianism thing.
Yeah.
It was, it just works really well because as a kid, you get it, don't you? And I think Doctor Who's on top of its game when they do a line like that, normally in explaining to the companion and say, you know what it's like, sea creatures, they're all stirred up at first, but then they start acting normal again. And that has just such clarity. And yet the message is there. Oh yeah, we shouldn't have zoos. No, we shouldn't really do this to animals.
But it's not what the story's about. It's not why the story was written. It gives you it comes as an added bonus.
Yeah.
But it's not the reason why Carnival of Monsters. It's not the reason why Carnival of Monsters exists in the way that modern storytelling seems to be. I got a message and I'm going to write this story in order to make that message, get that message across. It comes as an added bonus because being an animal lover myself, I don't like zoos and all the rest of it. So you get that across. There's also a wonderful phrase they use in reference to the talk when livestock refers to being so absolutely so that, but it doesn't swamp the story. It's there and it's there as an added bonus. It's not the raison d'etre of the story.
But that's what I mean. It's good science fiction in the way that it's just there if you want it. If you get my gist, but it's not laboured with a trowel and all the rest of it. Now, as we get coming to the end, Hugh, is there anything that you were wanting to talk about with Carnival of Monsters that we haven't raised yet?
I mean, one of the things which is quite interesting is you've got this contrast between Interminor, which in general looks fairly crap, and a rather good set on a ship, and in terms of what's real and what's not real at any one time, it makes. I presume it's just a factor of money, and there's an awful lot of effort into making it look interesting. But I do think there's a sort of almost deliberate crapness about Interminor. That it's meant to look a bit unreal because and it's meant to look a bit different and a bit shocking because of that, and it's not meant to be taken seriously. Hence the sort of the outfits of Vorg and Shurna, and I think that's again Holmes playing with the expectation of stuff on a meta level.
Can I ask one question? I want to know the answers of you three. Whether you thought, I don't know. I'm watching it again. Here we go. When the drashig goes through the hull of the ship, isn't it going to sink?
You'd imagine so.
It has a watertight, depending on its watertight bulkhead.
Yeah, but I thought that too. When the drashigs invade, and remember, they even at that, they go back to the beginning of the loop. They start behaving as normally. Are they noticing any of this damage to the ship as it goes on? That's a little plot hole that because the creature comes and goes as part of the normal loop. The Plesiosaurus, but the drashigs have done physical damage to the ship, as you say, Brendan. It will result in its capsizing. But whether or not it doesn't, as Major Daly and his crew are going about the place, aren't they noting the fact that half the hull has been ripped off or whatever?
Well, they are close enough to Bombay; they can make port, and also depends on how much of the watertight doors are damaged. Because it could hold. I mean, this is like a decade and a half after Titanic, where they were improving watertight door holdings. So if one is compromised, it can still kind of limp in.
We might not have seen the scene where Vorg and his dirty fingernails came in and just put a bit of cellophane over that to prevent it sinking.
Yeah, you just put a lid on it, didn't he? I mean, do you know one thing? It's such a nice thing when you go back and watch a John Pertwee. John Pertwee loves never mind playing with gadgets. you know, when he talked about the screws, he was telling Joe, oh, there'll be quite large screws or something. There's something about John Pertwee talking about gadgets and anything to do with technology.
And large
Yeah.
screws.
He's always convincing. I don't mean the reverse of polarity. I know that's not convincing. I mean real technology. He always sounds as though he knows what he's talking about. He always did.
Yeah.
You remember when he was in the Blue Peter studio and he was explaining the Hoomobile, and he loved talking about, and that does that, and that does that. And
I found that quite worrying, actually. You know, John, it doesn't fly. It doesn't do these things, you know.
Shh. I'm going to do a Tom Baker. Shh.
Yeah. It was like Purvis was doing the sort of thing like, okay, that's fine. Now, can we show Mr. Pertwee back to the home?
He's a little boy again. It's fun.
He is, yeah.
But the police, I mean, it followed the rules of the road, didn't it? It was allowed. It was a three-wheeler.
It was allowed on British roads at the time, it was, but it still didn't fly. And, you know, you threw a few switches. Do for that, you know. Taxi for Pertwee.
Yeah. Well, Carnival of Monsters, that was. I think it's important, though. Have I forgotten? Like I said, there's no Sutek, but what would the Ncuti 15th Doctor have done in these?
I didn't get that. Could you try again?
Well, yeah, I can give you a whole show again. I love that.
No, Eddy talking to you there.
Well, you're playing the John Pertwee Doctor who loves his gadgets. So there you go. You did a bit of tech. And your collar didn't get in a flap. So anyway, here we go. What would the Ncuti Doctor do? Now, to be fair, you know, this one, the cliffhanger that we've referenced already, and you get a close-up of John Pertwee and you get a close-up of Katy Manning, and John Pertwee just stands there. They don't do much. They don't run away or anything. And as you know, my criticisms of the Ncuti Doctor is sometimes he's paralyzed and indecisive. And I think for the first time, I'm going to say the 15th Doctor and the 3rd Doctor would do exactly the same thing.
Wouldn't Ncuti Doctor cry though and say, "You've nicked my toy"?
Yeah, it's my toy.
He'd be even more powerless and indecisive.
Even more. Is that possible, Michelle?
Yes, it is. Have you not watched the last season? It is.
I think there's quite a lot in this which you could say Ncuti would do much the same as John Pertwee. You know, the annoyance at people being kept in the scope or animals being kept in the scope. I can see it being written, and you know, it would be more obvious. It wouldn't be anywhere near as subtle, but a lot of that kind of what he's never going to get on with Major Daly. Never.
No.
No.
So there's our interesting starter. I think it's always interesting to see how far has Doctor Who changed. Sometimes it has to because of the times, but the Doctor's should be the same character, and that's what I always am interested in looking at. What about this scenario? This is we've referenced this as well, but not in a comparison. When Topping hello, and he says hello to the Mr. Daly. I can never get my names right.
Major Daly.
Major Daly.
Yeah, your namesake. You see, I am soiled, infected with honey, babes, being a diva, big entrance, which I don't like in a character anyway. I like that humility. I like a kind of, you know, discreet entrance. And of course, they're discovered. So he has to come up with this kind of topping what. What do you think the 15th Doctor would do in this scenario? Have I just given it away that it'll be honey babes? Oh God, you look tasty in that. Where did you get? Who's your tailor?
Yeah, probably.
Yeah.
Something boring.
Something fashion.
Yeah, and you wouldn't even stop. Just a man of his time, which Major Daly was, would have been made to feel guilty for being a man of his time. You know, by a man of his time, and that would have been. It would have spoiled a perfectly nice.
And also condemn them for the colonialism that's going on, because you're going to Bombay, and Bombay at this time is still a British colony in India. So there would be a lot of commentary on that.
Yeah, and the Doctor, obviously being a Time Lord, would say it's not called Bombay anymore. I mean, of course, but we didn't know that. But
hoping that at least the Ncuti doctor would have done the same as I did, which is said, there's no way they're talking about Fred Astaire in 1926.
Yeah.
Yes. Yes. Now, John, I thought I saw you pulling the face when I showed this photograph earlier.
Got one there.
And it's got nothing to do with me saying, what would the Ncuti doctor do? This is.
I tell you what, it's not the Queensberry rose. That looks like below the belt.
No, it's definitely below the belt, and it looks as though he's getting naughty. It's wrestling suddenly, not boxing. But is
he perhaps trying to get Ian Martyr's Toblerone?
Venusian Queensberry Rose?
Do you know what, Hugh? This is the one, and I accidentally set this up, and I thought, oh my God, I'm saying, what would the Ncuti doctor do? The lights would go off.
We know what the Ncuti doctor is doing.
Yeah, well, you've just gone rogue on me, haven't you?
Yeah, no, and it was done by accident. But as soon as I asked that question, I'm going, well, the hand would be roughly the same place. I'm saying. Anyway, there we go. And the last
line along the lines of, is that all you got for me, babes? Yeah.
Yes. And the last one, Hugh's already kind of mentioned this, Hugh, which is the telling off of the aliens. Maybe no spittle, maybe no losing it and kind of crouching and he really loses his temper in a way that I found seemed immature. But the doctor, I love it. I mean, that moment particularly, he's just been sarcastic, isn't he? When he says, "I'll just be in the corner if that's a problem for you," and I just love the way he does it. It's helped by his height. I'm not sure how tall Ncuti is, but John Pertwee,
5'11", 5'11 and a half. He's sort of now what's average for a doctor.
Yeah. But he always comes across statuesque, Pertwee, doesn't he? And he does sound... seeing him with the draconians and stuff like that was great. So I think this was more toned. He's angry. I love his anger, but it's not anger, spittle, so to speak. Anyone got a thought on this one?
Well, it's all about subtlety, isn't it? And lack of subtlety.
Yes.
Yes.
We keep so we're having fun and having jokes with it, but essentially that's what it boils down to, that the doctor is able to undercut these silly people and all their bureaucratic grey squabblings with a couple of lines and wanders over there, and that's it. Whereas nowadays there'll be a whole big lecture at them, but by virtue of lecturing them, he's lecturing us as well.
Yeah.
The lack of subtlety, So
well, let me be unsubtle now and say I need your ratings. So
does modern day Doctor Who need our ratings?
Yeah, that's true.
Monsters,
just keep watching the same episode. That's what they seem to like. You can do that with our channel as well if you want. Keep watching.
They would cry today or they got that rating. Oh my God, it would, and that was just probably average for that era.
Yes, I know, but that would encourage them also. So we don't want to do that.
Yeah. But I mean, and that's probably was seen as an average, not special rating for that period.
So I'll start us off on the first one on the rank. So basically, I've got to call this outstanding because although, as we said, the jeopardy's not really there. I used to love Doctor Who doing that. Android Invasion's just a village. Demons, to a degree, is just a village. I used to love that. Pyramids of Mars, to a degree, seem to be just in a mansion with a force field. I always liked that level of it. And so that's not a problem to me. I love all the characterization in this. I love the writing in this. As I said in my thumbnail, this is when the Doctor's unbound, and I wish we had more of the Third Doctor like this. He's on the top of his game with Jo. What's not to like? And I think the story was well structured. So yes, I've got it down for outstanding. So John, I'm coming to you next. Just give me time just to kind of, pull a few levers and reverse the polarity and all that sort of stuff.
I'm waiting.
What is your rating?
It's outstanding. Of course it is. It's outstanding. Absolutely, it's outstanding. It's everything you want from Doctor Who. It may not be an out-and-out classic. It may not be amongst my top 10 Doctor Who, because it isn't. But you know what? It does everything Doctor Who needs to do. It's self-contained. It's got fantastic writing. It's got a well-structured plot. It's got fantastic characters, which you can flesh out in your own head, and that's all courtesy of the marvelous Robert Holmes. It's very competently directed by Barry Letts, and it's doing something a Doctor Who should always do: keep pushing with us, with script, with ideas, or with effects. And Doctor Who often falls down at this. But you know what? That's not a reason for not trying. And it still does. So when I saw this properly by the Five Faces of Doctor Who, it was amongst my favourites of the time. It actually beat the Three Doctors, which surprised me in terms of entertaining me the most. So it's always had a very soft place in my heart. And Carnival of Monsters, for all those things I've just outlined, is without doubt an outstanding example of Doctor Who, be it classic or modern. It does what Doctor Who should do.
And may I say, because everybody's thinking it, that the photograph up there does you no justice because you look better now.
No, yeah, that's after a year in Sense Sphere.
So we'll get rid of that one then. So it's Michelle next. You're the next cab on the rank. So your judgment, Michelle.
Outstanding. It's just fun from top to bottom. Everything they promised on the 10.
And that's lovely to hear, considering it was your first time watching it.
Yeah, it is. And yeah, I'll go back for it. I'll be on a rewatch. So yeah, it's a fun episode.
Oh, well, that's good. That's good, because there's no guarantee, is there? There's no guarantee in these things that just because you like Doctor Who, just because anything. So obviously, Hugh, you're going to finish off with
Outstanding. This might well be in my top 10. I think it's my favourite Pertwee story, certainly. And top 10s are always difficult and they change anyway. But again, watching it, the amount of stuff that's going on in what's a fairly low-key story, but you've got satire, you've got mirroring, you've got the development of the female characters, you've got character development. It's just packed with great lines. What more could you want?
And I think we better round off on that, because what more could you want? 4 episodes of classic Doctor Who. It's classic in the way that it's everything you should expect from Doctor Who, from story to characterization to the lot, and a damn good writer on top. Dudley Simpson playing in the background. There's something about Dudley Simpson's music that just kind of comforts me anyway. It just takes me back.
So weird.
I am, yeah, I know. Confirmed. So thank you, everybody. That was our review of Carnival of Monsters. Thank you, and I'm hopefully we'll do.
That's one thing. There weren't enough dailies in it for my liking.
Right, I'll have a look at the back catalogue of Doctor Who and see if there's any more.
What John wanted was, if there was major daily, he could be in it as minor daily.
Yeah.
Remember that. Be kind of young then. I'd do that. Yeah.
Well, I was nearly going to
minor, daily minor.
You could be daily minor. I mean, you'd be the right age.
Not in 1926, I wouldn't.